What is up, ladies and gentlemen? It is another Saturday of college football action with my co-host Ray Greyfox. Ray, how you doing today? It's good to see you, buddy.
Good to see you, Dan Moneyline Miller. We're here live on the campus of Virginia Tech. I was just mentioning to Dan the boil water notice has been lifted after 2 weeks here. So we're all drinking clear, fresh water, just like my well at home. Homecoming weekend, Dan, here in Blacksburg. Tech is off with a bye this week. Homecoming in Blacksburg means what, Dan? The Battle of the Bergs. Blacksburg versus Christiansburg, two big rivals. Big shout out. They're our rivals, but they did take us 2-1 this year. The middle school lost a heartbreaker 12-6 on a tipped pick six. The JV then went on to beat Christiansburg 2014. The decider last night, Christiansburg varsity 20-7. So, and you'll see there's a tackle from Christiansburg. You will see in 1A ball coming up here soon. He's a senior. He's like 6'6", 350. He's recruited by everybody. The word is he's going to stay here at Tech, but things could change with that. But great to be here with you, Dan. Week 7, college football. Let's roll.
Let's roll. All right, getting right into it, and hope that all the Blacksburg people are having fun over there, and hope the water's better for you guys. And hopefully that young gentleman, will see him on Saturday soon. So. Right. Coming, and the first game of the day we have coming in, kicking off, is unranked South Carolina going on the road to face number 7 Alabama. Alabama is a 21-point favorite here, total 50.5. Buyback on South Carolina is 10-1. Ray, do you think Alabama has a big bounce back game this week?
Well, I'll tell you, this one I saw it this morning at 20, or just pre-show at 22 even. So some money definitely rolling in on the Tide rolling in. Another note, Dan, we were supposed to have a guest picker today. Saw him last night at the Mexican restaurant. He had a goldfish-sized margarita. Thought he was ready for the show. Apparently, a few too many edibles last night, Dan. So the chair next to me is empty. We're gonna hopefully we can get him on at some point, but we got to hide the edibles apparently. South Kakalaki heading to Alabama here. 22-50.5. Alabama here, Dan, 19-0 straight up and 13-6 against the spread when hosting former SEC East foes. For those of you that know, they stopped with the divisional play in all the major conferences because of the new playoff system. They didn't want a 7-5 team to upset somebody in a conference title and get an automatic bid to the tournament, to the big dance. So former SEC East foes, Alabama dominating them, as I mentioned. Last time here was 2009, Alabama 20, SC 6. SC was an 18-point dog in that game, so they covered there. South Carolina has lost their last five SEC road games. So a tough stretch for Coach Beamer and his charges on the road. However, one good note on the Beamer ball side, South Carolina has covered 4 of their last 5 as double-digit dogs. I've got this, this price is probably a little high. I didn't touch the game. South Carolina rating, not too bad. As I said before, I've never been a big fan of Beamer here. Tough test for them on the road. I think Alabama's got to obviously shifted into another gear here after the loss. I look for Alabama to win here. Too big a number for me to take a dive into, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, with Alabama losing last week to Vanderbilt, massive upset, and also South Carolina losing to Ole Miss. You have both teams coming off a loss, so the bounce back theory isn't really applicable here. But you got to think Alabama coming off that loss to Vanderbilt, they're pretty revved up, right, for this game. So I would say if you're going to lay the points, I would say either lay it with Alabama or pass, as Ray said, because 21.5 is a lot of points. So especially because they couldn't even sniff that with Vanderbilt last weekend. So next game we have on the dock here is another double-digit favorite here, right? We have Clemson, number 10th ranked Clemson, going on the road to face Wake Forest. Clemson is a 3-touchdown favorite here, 21 points, total 64. Anything on this game, Ray?
This Clemson team, I'm a fan of Dabo. I'm a fan of the way that he's continued to do, the Frank Sinatra method of his coaching. He is doing it his way. He's earned that right. His record at Clemson is phenomenal. Big fan of his. I think Clemson is way too much for Wake in this spot, quite frankly. The ratings indicate the line is priced right in the right spot, though, that 21 number. always leaves a back door open, but I just don't think Wake has enough juice to stay with them in this one. Clemson has won their last 7, Dan, in Winston-Salem. Last time here was 2022. Both teams were ranked in that one. There was 4 lead changes. Clemson came out on top 51-45. Again, that's the last trip here in 22. Wake Forest has lost 15 straight meetings in this rivalry. Last time they won was 2008. Wake Forest, however, has covered 3 of the last 4. So again, it's a big number, but Clemson has shown they're not really going to take their foot off the gas if they get somebody down. They're not going to. I don't see as much of a backdoor possibility here, even with the big number. If I went any way in this game, it would be with Clemson. Like I said, big fan of Dabo's. He's turned over that cut loose the offensive coordinator here, Garrett Riley, I believe, and he's absolutely, poured the points on since that first Georgia game. Opening day, Georgia lost to Georgia in Atlanta in the Dome there. So a little lean here for me on Clemson, and I just, again, don't think that Wake has the horses to keep up with them if they just start cutting it loose on offense.
Yeah, I mean, for Clemson, yes, last week, 16.5-point favorites, lost by the hook last week. So bettors are a little salty on that end, but they go play another ACC team here in Wake Forest. And I think, again, it's a massive spread for a reason, Ray, right? The bookmakers have this for a reason. And I don't know if Wake Forest, like you said, is going to stick around in this game because Clemson is a powerhouse, to say the least. Next game we have on the dock, Ray, is number 21 ranked Missouri going on the road to face Massachusetts. This is a 27.5-point spread, I'm pretty sure. Yes, 27.5-point spread on DraftKings, total 54. Buyback on the UMass Minutemen, right? Minutemen, 17-1 on the UMass. I don't think they have a chance to win this game, Ray. What do you think?
So encourage all of you, again, get on Nuke the House, guys. Their top 3 handicappers are up 90 units apiece. They're absolutely smashing it this year. If you go on there today and you look up NCAA football articles, you'll find a piece that I wrote on this ball game being played in Amherst, Massachusetts, the Minutemen, as Dan mentioned. So this is a big game for Missouri in a lot of different ways. So I know a few Missouri alumni, they're NIL donators. That there's a little divide forming in this locker room. So their goal this year was to dominate recruiting in Kansas City and St. Louis. In other words, don't let the homegrown talent leave the state. So they focused on absolutely dominating recruiting there. And here's what happens when you do that. You get guys that have played together or against each other in most cases their whole lives. They've played in all-star games at every level. They've played, faced off against each other. One guy may come in, he's not heavily recruited. He may get $300,000 in no money, but a player that he may have dominated in individual matchups is more recruited and ends up getting $1.2 million in NIL money. As the season rolls on, player A is looking at player B's car, his gear. Everybody's starting to talk about the leaks are starting to get out, who makes what, that kind of thing. I mean, these are college kids, they're going to talk.
Yeah.
There's a potential real crevasse forming in that locker room. And I feel like, in looking at this game and Mizzou's schedule, they opened with, I think, Murray State and Buffalo. They absolutely smashed both those teams. A lackluster sort of sleepy win against Boston College. I want to say that was by 6, and they were laying 17 there. Then the overtime game where they barely got by out of Vandy. Then they get a bye week before their big SEC, real SEC hard test, so to speak, if Vandy wasn't enough. And they got smashed last week in College Station, 41-10. So this is a team that, with the schedule, with the amount of money they spent, all things were lining up that this was a top 12 team that was going to definitely compete in the tournament. And again, now they're sort of on the ropes they certainly haven't lived up to expectations against any kind of higher level competition. As I mentioned, BC, Vandy smashed in College Station, 2 small margins of victory in the other 2. So this one, read the article. It's a good piece, but we did side with Mizzou here. I thought this one would hit 28, Dan. I was surprised. I bought it early at 26.5. Obviously, I don't have any issue with 27.5 up to 28. I wouldn't have an issue. This is one of those games, Dan, where if we lose a unit today, we probably stand to make 3 to 5 units on the home stretch against fading Mizzou. Because if they don't just work out on this UMass team, I have a feeling that Drink loses this locker room. and they're probably going to have a lot of questions moving forward. So this is sort of a, we hope to get the unit today. If we do, great. And that may dictate some of the plays later in the season on Mizzou. Mizzou is 1-5, Dan, as a double-digit favorites on the road since 2019. So not a role that Missouri is comfortable in. This first meeting, by the way, between these two, I'm sure that's no surprise to anybody. UMass 0-11 straight up versus the SEC since 2012. UMass, however, is on a 9-1 against the spread run, all as double-digit dogs. So in that position, again, Mizzou not a big producer as a double-digit fave. UMass 9-1 as a double-digit dog. So again, some trends here are pointing to UMass. This to me is a Mizzou get well game, or they get faded on out for me. So that's the article this week. We want to give a shout out on this one. Last week we gave out on the article and the show, we gave out the Navy. That was a easy blowout winner for us. I just want to talk about, I was lucky enough to be raised by 2 great parents and 3 awesome older sisters. The middle one of those 3, Claire Greyfox, she actually was one of the first women to attend the Naval Academy. And by watching her there, she absolutely inspired me. She was my hero. She was my role model as an athlete. She's probably the reason I spent the last 35 years making every dollar I made in athletics. So I want to give her a huge shout out. She's a big fan of the show and a big fan of Dan Moneyline Miller as well.
Awesome. Thanks for listening.
So we're looking to bring home back-to-back article winners with Navy, and this week with Mizzou laying the big lumber.
Yeah, and like Ray said, we've been watching Mizzou, I think, for a little while now on this show. We've been going back and forth with this team, and like you said, this is no more. Next week, this week, this is the week, Ray. We find out if this Missouri team it's good enough to back points with, and like you said, if they can't do it this week, we are done with them, Ray. We are out. It's a breakup. We're done. Get them out of here. So this, ladies and gentlemen, I know you've been listening for a couple weeks now, but this is the last week we are backing Missouri. This is the game they have to win and cover. If they cannot do that, we are out on this team. So just moving forward, because I want to make a point, because we have been talking about this Missouri team the whole year. Next on the dock here, we have 2 unranked teams. Little letdown spot, Ray, if you're a bettor here. I think this is a good quote-unquote letdown spot. Washington on the road to face Iowa. This Iowa team is a 2.5-point favorite at home, total 41.5. Washington coming off a big win last weekend against Michigan, and Iowa coming off a kind of a disappointing loss against Ohio State last weekend. So again, like I said, a lot of people are looking at the bounce back theory for Iowa, and that literally applies to this game right here, because Washington coming off a massive win, a top 10 win in Michigan last week. So Ray, talk to me about this game.
So this one's interesting as well. Going into this season, I was actually really high on this Iowa team. I might have missed a little bit, swung and missed a little bit there. So they had a new OC, they had a new quarterback that I think he came out of the SEC, I believe, but he came out of a major school. So they looked to upgrade the quarterback position. They definitely upgraded the offensive coordinator role. And unfortunately, I think at this point, Dan, we'd both agree that they're the second best team in Iowa behind Iowa State.
Yep.
I saw this just before the show at 3, so there's definitely some Iowa 3 money rolling in. Series is tied 3-3. Huskies were last year in 1964. So again, we're seeing some games that aren't often played as we get into this point of the season, which is rare as we get into conference play. But with the new conference alignments and new teams moving around different from conference to conference, we're going to see a lot of that as we move forward. Games like Cal and Pitt, which we'll cover later. Iowa 7-1 against the spread in home conference openers since 2009. This is their home conference opener. Iowa defense, in my opinion, not living up to expectations. 328.5 yards per game against Iowa. I would have projected this defense to be more around the 270, 280 range. So again, they're not performing in where their strength was. They're not really tearing it up on offense where we thought they would get much better. And then this is a Washington team that I was a little bit down on. I actually took under their season win total, which can still happen here. But their defense is only allowing 256.6 yards per game. So, if you would have asked me preseason before the season started, I would have said Iowa's defense would be way better going into this game. Washington was decimated by the draft. That's why I was a little down on them. They lost basically their entire offensive line to the draft. They lost their head coach to Alabama. I just didn't see any way that they were going to be able to rally and have the kind of season that they're having thus far. Their rating is much, much higher than I had anticipated. Iowa hovering right around the 0 mark in my rating, so much lower than actually anticipated. So, nothing major here for me, just to double check. I do think Iowa's the second best team in the state of Iowa behind Iowa State. No action for me here, but if I would have to bet the game, I would have to side with Washington.
Yeah. Again, as I pointed out, if you're really, looking at look ahead spots or let down spots in betting, this is one of the games I think you'd be circling if you're doing that. Next game we have on the dock is 3:30 p.m. EST game. We have the Red River rivalry. I can't say that say that 3 times fast. The Red River rivalry between Texas, number 1 ranked Texas, going to play 18th ranked Oklahoma. Texas is a 17-point favorite now on DraftKings. Total 49.5, Ray. A lot of talk about this game in this week. Do you think Oklahoma can keep it close, or do you think Quinn Ewers is going to come back a little rusty? Talk to me about this game.
So this was one I think I called on our show earlier when we covered one of those teams, but I said I would be fading Oklahoma in this spot. I grabbed the 14 on the opening number, so I've got 3 points of line value there. This game, Dan, played on a neutral in the Cotton Bowl in Dallas. What a great historic venue for college football. Absolutely amazing. I'm going to solve the stumbling part because I would do the same thing you did. I like to call it the Red River Showdown. See how easy that is?
That's a lot better, actually.
And there's too many R's in that thing the other way. I just blur through it. So it's the first Red River Showdown where both teams obviously are in the SEC with the switch up they both made in conference play. Texas, this is the 120th meeting. And the math lad up here, Texas is up in the series 63, 51, and 5 straight up. 9 of the last 11 here, Dan, decided by 8 points or less. So this number skyrocketing well above that traditional margin recently of victory in this contest. Oklahoma is on a nice run here. 11 of the last 15 and 5 of the last 6 Oklahoma has won. Last year, Oklahoma won this contest 34-30. To me, this Texas team, I mean, when you have the kind of quarterback depth that they do, they had a Heisman, certainly a Heisman, someone that was discussed to win the Heisman Trophy and Ewers at quarterback. He goes down and they just truck in what do they bring in? They just bring in another Manning to throw the ball around the field. I was down on this Oklahoma team coming into the season. Their current rating with me is a minus 1.75. Texas's rating is up around 30. That's probably, if it stays there, they're going to be ranked. Then they're going to be ranked top 3 if it stays there. They don't have the easiest schedule. Oklahoma has a much tougher schedule this year. I don't think Oklahoma has the horses here. Again, I like Texas in this game. Do want to give a shout out. Heather from work, she put together was part of a committee that put together a nice party to honor the workforce here for going through some of the stuff we've gone through with the hurricane and move in and all that good stuff that goes on in college camps. Catered by Mission Barbecue. If you're in the Blacksburg, Christiansburg area, the cornbread and the beef brisket is unreal. Shout out to Heather because she has a sibling that is a cheerleader on the Oklahoma squad. So very excited for this one. I know she'll be watching. I sided with Texas here, Dan. I've been down on this Oklahoma team, and I said I would fade them in this spot. I just think that this is a get back for Texas, and I think that they've got everything in place that they need to barnstorm Oklahoma in this game.
Yeah, and to Ray's point, Texas leads the series 63, 51, and 5. That's a 550 average here. And again, Ray, this is the first time the Longhorns have been ranked number 1 in this matchup since 1984, and the result of that game was a tie. So that's just an interesting point. But going back, this is a different Texas team. I think Texas is again ranked number 1, so that they're obviously the best in the country. But This is since 1984, the first time Texas has been ranked number 1 during this matchup. So that's why we're seeing such a heavy favorite here in 17 points rather than, like you said, a lot of these matchups have been 8 points or less, right? But again, that's the reason why we're seeing Texas so heavily favored in this matchup, is because I think that number 1 spot. Going to the next game we have, Ray, is number 4 ranked Penn State on the road to face USC, a Big Ten matchup here. Penn State is a 3.5-point favorite on the road, total 51.5. Do you think Drew Aller can go on the road and get this done here, Ray? Because I don't think so.
How do you tell us how you really feel, Dan? This game is a weird one. My ratings obviously have Penn State here as the choice. I'm not a big fan. I'm going to be honest. I'm not a big fan of James Franklin. Anytime it gets into bigger games, I think he tends to do what he's supposed to do against lesser opponents. This game, this is an east to west travel spot for Penn State. I saw it at 3.5 and 51 this morning pre-show. Last 6 are split here between these two teams, 3-3 straight up and against the spread. So no historical advantage for any of the teams here in this game. The last meeting, as you can imagine, this was a game that we probably only saw on New Year's Day in most of our lives. The last meeting was the 2017 Rose Bowl in Pasadena. There, they went for 1,040 yards combined in that game. So, again, Penn State, a school you usually think of, or I usually think of as middle linebackers and defense. That was a big time shootout. USC has won the last 3 and are 2-1 against the spread in those 3 spots. So it looks like this series started out with Penn State winning the first 3, USC winning the second 3, and the last 2 that were both in the Rose Bowl. So again, a traditional, old Pac-10, Big Ten matchup in the Rose Bowl. Penn State is allowing 235.4 yards on defense. So that's pretty stifling up to this point. We can look at their schedule. It's not like they've played the mightiest of schedules, but defense is defense, yards are yards. Yeah, every offense is trying to get as many yards as they can. And if you're limiting offenses to that low of a number, you've obviously got a really strong defense. Or it's no surprise there. We expected that coming into this season, that they would have one of the better defenses in their conference. USC, however, not exactly getting gashed at 316 yards per game. I did not take anything on this game. I have no play. I'm not the biggest fan. I watched the Penn State UCLA game last week. I thought they should have kind of put away a weak UCLA team that was in Happy Valley there at Penn State, and I really expected them to throttle UCLA in that spot. They just kind of walked through it a little bit. Again, not a Franklin fan. This would probably be constituted as one of the bigger games they're going to play this year. They travel east to west. Ratings favor Penn State here. No opinion from me. Again, we're running the same special. Last week we're going to run it $99.99. Get you the rest of the next 2 months of college football, or the next 8 weeks of college football plays. We are working right now with Nuke The House to try to get packages available on their site. Right now, they're available through me. So until we get that done, contact me. That price is going to go up as the season wraps up, as the ratings get sharper. So nothing here for me, Dan. I'm just not a Penn State, Franklin, or Aller fan, as you mentioned.
Yeah, I think it's very underwhelming, I think is the right word to call this season for Penn State. We all thought they were going to be really good. And I mean, number 4 in the country isn't bad, Ray, right? But again, underwhelming is that word, I think, that's associated with Penn State. Again, follow us on YouTube, nukethehouse.com. We love your comments, subscribes. Make sure you comment in the comment section below. We might even throw it on the screen. So comment, like, subscribe. Make sure you turn on post notifications. That also helps us out. That helps you out, become a better. So follow us at nukethehouse.com. We're up over 300 units this year. So if you like money, you should subscribe to nukethehouse.com.
I like money.
Yeah, there we go. So next game we have today on the dock, Ray, is California on the road to face number 22 Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is a 3.5-point favorite here, total 58.5 on DraftKings. Buyback in California is plus 140. A lot of bettors, right, that I've talked to love Pittsburgh in this spot. What do you say?
I would agree with the people that you've talked to there. Ratings make this game closer to, I had a much higher number favoring Pitt on this game. So when I saw this number pop, I grabbed it, and I think I had it opening at 3.5. It's pretty much stayed right there, which again, always suspicious when it seems like everybody's on a side, a lot of tickets and a lot of money's on that side, and the line isn't moving at all. That's a little bit odd. Again, another odd matchup here. Team traveling west to east. This is a 2,100-mile journey for the Golden Bears as they head east to Acrisure Stadium to take on the Panthers of Pitt. Cal, oddly enough, I would have never guessed this, 2-0 all-time at Pittsburgh. Now, the caveat to that number is they haven't played there since 1966. So, obviously, they didn't come in there and do anything to Dan Marino when he was at Pitt, or Kenny Pickett even for that matter. But Pitt last hosted a California team in 1974. Pitt 8-4 straight up versus ACC foes at home. And yes, folks, the California Pacific Ocean Golden Bears are in the Atlantic Coast Conference. So the last 3 years, Pitt is 8-4 in this role versus ACC foes at home. I do like Pitt here. If Cal jumps up and does something, I'm a big fan of Narduzzi, the head coach of Pitt. Huge fan of his. He always seems to get more from less. It's interesting. Like some seasons, Penn State will be the highly touted team, and my ratings will actually, like when they used to play, when Narduzzi was coaching there, Narduzzi owned Franklin. Like he would beat him all the time. And I like Narduzzi. I like the Pitt Panthers here. There's nothing about Cal. Their rating's not bad. I've got them at a 5.05, but which is a good ranking. I mean, that's usually a fairly solid team, but I feel like Pitt, the 3.5 number might have scared off some people on the opener, but I took it. Pitt minus 3.5 here, and I look for Narduzzi to get the job done, and as Cal travels east.
And I want to bring back this point, right? Remember a game we were talking about a couple weeks ago, the Baylor and Colorado game, and then the next week Baylor was favored by 3 because everyone watched that game, right? Last weekend, Cal had a very, I wouldn't say disappointing loss because they played their hearts out against Miami, but they obviously lost the game. And a lot of people think that it's going to be a letdown spot for Cal. A lot of people watched that game last. So do you think that we're getting a lot of recency bias on people saying, oh, Cal should have won that game, so they're putting their money now into this game? So that's why the 3.5 is kind of staying there, right? Do you think that's maybe another like recency bias what we're talking about here?
I think a lot of where the odds maker has to set the number. Odds makers have ratings. I have ratings. Anybody who does this has their own set of ratings. You always have to kind of factor in which way a team's going. In my book, I've got one of these. It's old. It's a spiral bound notebook. It's got all 140 plus college teams in it, and I have their rating as I start to collect it. Again, I don't do anything against 1AA teams because I feel like that can really skew a team's rating when they blow out some 1AA competition. But what I do is list the rating every week, so you can clearly see when you pull a team's page out is the team trending down or up in their ratings, and that's obviously what we refer to as recency bias. If a team gets blown out the week before, the rating's obviously going to drop a little bit. It's just the way it goes. They allow more yards than they put up. They allow more points than they put up. These are all things that affect the team's rating. So I wouldn't argue that at all. Pitt has sort of been getting it done also in recent spots. They're finding ways to win. They're finding ways to cover. I think they had UNC last week, if I'm not mistaken.
Did, and they won. Yep.
So, Pitt's just covering numbers. They're doing it at home. This seems to be a great spot for them. Again, can Cal, does last week's loss inspire them, or does it sort of beat them up a little bit? We'll find out pretty quickly, I think, in this game in Acrisure Stadium in Steel City.
Yeah, and I just wanted to point that out because the Cal game against Miami was a standalone game, so a lot of people were watching it. So, they kind of got a little familiar with this Cal team. So I just wanted to point that out. Maybe people are buying a little too much into Cal this weekend. Going into the next game we have is Cincinnati on the road to play UCF. Both teams are unranked here. That's correct. Both teams are unranked. UCF is a 3.5-point favorite here at home. Total 58.5. Buyback on Cincinnati is plus 130 on the money line. What do you like in this game, Ray?
No action for me. Game's priced really well here. Ratings say that the number should be about where it's at. UCF's a little bit of a letdown this year. I kind of expected them to have a really strong season, to be honest with you, and their rating is just under 5 in my ratings, +5, which is I would have expected them to be in the
That
double.
loss against Colorado was pretty bad, I think.
I
A
agree.
double-digit favorite, and you lose the game outright. That kind of has to drop your ratings, right?
And they were thumped, quite frankly. They were handled in that game. I don't think it was ever even close. So, I'm not. This UCF team to me is a bit of a letdown. Cincinnati is off the bye here, so a little bye biased on the Cincinnati side of the ball. 10th meeting, 4 of the last 5, Dan, have been decided by 4 points or less. So recency tells us this is a game that's played tight. The number indicates that as well, with UCF sitting at 3. Last time here was 2022. Both were AAC schools. UCF won that one 25-21. These two teams have played every season since 2015 as former conference foes, and UCF has won the last 2 by a combined 6 points. So again, the number is dead on in my ratings. The history here shows a close game. The last 2 are by combined 6, and they're laying 3 here. I just don't like this UCF team. I was maybe I'm a little let down by them. I actually thought they were going to play Colorado a lot tougher than they did. And as you mentioned, that game really wasn't. The closest it was is when it kicked off, quite frankly. And, didn't play the game. If I had any lean here, it would be with the Bearcat.
All right. Yeah. Like I said, very disappointing season for USC, I think, just USCF. I mean, it just to be a double-digit favorite and lose the game outright like that was pretty disappointing. All right. Next game we have is Mississippi State on the road to face Georgia. We have Mississippi State. Don't have the line right on.
33.5, 54.5.
Georgia, 33.5 point favorite facing Mississippi State. What do you like in this game, Ray?
Well, I mean, this number to me is awfully high. Mississippi State is off the bye, so they have had extra time to prepare for a Georgia team that is, quite frankly, underwhelming in their rating this year. This is as low as a Georgia team has been rated in recent memory, and by recent memory, I'm talking about like probably a half a decade. Georgia here is sitting at around 7 in my ratings. Mississippi State's around a -14. So that would kind of put the game normally 20. We're looking at 20, add another 4 to 5 for home field. So it's priced a little high for my liking. I know I can understand why the number is where it's at. It's sort of like everybody keeps waiting for Georgia to wake up, so to speak, to have that big, 56-0 SEC blowout win like they've had every year, it seems like, in recent memory. Mississippi State, Dan, has lost the last 13 in Athens. So no good memories, no good vibes for the Bulldog as they travel to Athens. Their last win here, Dan, was not even in my lifetime. It was 1956, the last time Mississippi State traveled to Athens and won. Georgia has a 20-6 series advantage here, and Georgia has covered 3 of the last 4. I'm going to guess this is, I don't know the numbers on all those games, but I'm going to guess that this is probably one of the higher numbers in those last 4 games. And the home team in this series, Dan, 5-1 against the spread. So, I don't have any play here. The number's way too high for me. It honestly would shock me if Georgia covered this number, just because they're just not doing anything really, really well right now. They're playing good ball. We know that they're talented. We know they're one of the top teams if you line up the rosters against anybody. But that's just such a high number for a team that hasn't really overly impressed. This is normally to have this spread here. I would look for a Georgia team to have a 20+ rating, and they're not even halfway there in my ratings. So way too high a number for me to delve in. Mississippi State, way too bad for me to back, even with 33 here. So a no play for me, Dan.
It just seems like some of the Georgia play calling isn't really aggressive, right, Ray? Like some of the times we've seen Georgia, I mean, they're not hesitant to throw the 80-yard go route, and the wide receivers up. They're not doing that this year, and that seems to be kind of hurting them this year and not putting their foot really on the throttle.
Right.
So whether they change their play calling and game plan. But as of right now, like Ray says, they're just not really showing us who they really are. And you got to be concerned about that because, they're not going to just switch it off on a light switch, just because the spread is 33.5, right? They don't care about the spread. So just something to notice, right, for Georgia if you've been watching their games, I think this year they haven't put the throttle down, and so the 33.5 here has to scare you, I think, as a backer if you're thinking to back Georgia. Next game we have is an SEC battle. We have Florida going on the road to face 8th-ranked Tennessee. Tennessee is a 14.5-point favorite here on DraftKings. Total 55.5. Buyback on Florida is plus 440. What do you like in this game, Ray?
This is a beauty, a true SEC, what we would call an SEC East clash. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Best pie eater. I know he was at the Arizona State win last night, so now he's wanting to know what that rating is going to do. Dan, be honest, Pie. I have that Arizona State team ranked nicely, so I would expect it to go up. The Utah is another team. A lot of people expected that, myself included. A lot of people, including myself, I take it on the chin. I thought Utah would contend to win that conference in their first year in it, which is very, very rare historically. So that's a huge win, regardless. It's a top 20 ranked team Arizona took down last night. Jersey's in the house. Asked, does Alabama put up a big number for team total? We covered that game. It's Alabama bounce back. If you believe in the bounce back, then you believe in Alabama scoring a crap ton today against Beamer and South Carolina. Faxman is in the house, a true legend in the game. I do hope we cash these tickets. Fax. Spencer Rowe just jumps in. What up, Spence? I know who that is. Now I know. Spencer popped in. Big dog. He had to miss last week's show because he was running around cranking valves here on campus as we flushed the water system to change the filters. So everybody got their tasty water as we have now. Nice job with that, Spencer. Florida, Tennessee. This is a traditional SEC East clash. You cannot spell citrus without UT. An old Spurrier quote that used to stir up Phil Fulmer. That was always right before this game. That quote would always pop out from Spurrier. You can't spell citrus without UT. Florida has covered 6 of the last 7 in this series. This is team with the most rushing yards, Dan. This is a really cool one I dug up. Team with the most rushing yards is 18-3 straight up in this ball game. And looking at it, just looking at it from the surface, one would have to think Tennessee rushes for more here. I don't know. Florida 17-2 straight up, 14-5 against the spread since 2005. Tennessee, as we know, has been down up until just recently. They're kind of starting to turn things around. This looks to be a big year for them. Ratings definitely show Tennessee to be the play here. I didn't touch this game. And Florida has lost 2 of the last 4 at Neyland Stadium, which is where they're playing today. If you've never seen a game there, folks, it's a great place to see a ball game. 100,000 plus deep there on the river. So no opinion for me here, Dan. It's just oddly, suspiciously a bit low, but odds makers know this is a very traditional rivalry that's played every year. No action for me. You'd have to lean to Tennessee. I think this Florida team, this quarterback juggles, and Florida at home is a whole different animal, right? And we're going to talk about another SEC game, I think, in two games that we cover. There's certain teams, it's just a huge advantage to play when they play at home. It's massive. And, Neyland obviously is that with 100,000 deep. I would have a different feeling on this game, I can tell you, if it was played in the swamp. Did not bet it. If I had any lean, it would be with Tennessee.
All right. Yeah, good breakdown there. Next game we have on the dock is probably, I think, the game of the week. We have number 2 ranked Ohio State going on the road to face number 3 ranked Oregon. Ohio State on DraftKings is a 3.5-point favorite. Other places you can find a flat 3. Total 54. Buyback on Oregon Ducks is plus 140. Do you think Dylan Gabriel can pull off the upset here, Ray?
Yeah, this one's interesting. Again, Ohio State's rating is through the moon. When you dig into that, this was a game that I think on the surface, it's just so easy to take the pedigree in Ohio State. I mean, it's just they're loaded. Again, another team that's kind of Final Four or bust this year. I think for Ryan Day, they've struggled recently against their arch rival. This is a big season for them. They have spent a ton of money building this football team. Quite frankly, one of the highest NIL spenders. Oddly, right across the ball from them today will be one of the other top 5 NIL spenders, Phil Knight, the chairman and founder of Nike. You might have heard of that company, Dan. They make shoes. They are also a huge NIL spender. Phil Knight sees to that. Of course, known most for their iconic uniform combinations, again, provided by Nike. They're certainly some of the best uniforms in the game here. Surface looked like an Ohio State play, dead red. As I dug into it, Oregon's played actually a much tougher schedule than Ohio State. And Oregon's rating is, I've got them rated behind Ohio State, but if you start, again, always factor in the rating. In other words, don't just look at how a team's look at who they've accumulated that against. And that's extremely important as we get into the meat of the season here, because a lot of teams kind of set up that schedule soft to get them going. Team looks good on paper. They're undefeated. They're scoring a lot of points, but look at the level of competition. In other words, is it impressive if a team rushes for 300 yards? Well, it is if they do it against a team that allows 98 yards rushing. But if they do it against a team that allows 285 rushing every week, it's just sort of a ho-hum 300 yards. Still awesome, but it's not the same 300 yards as doing it against good rush defense. Ohio State here, Dan, has won 9 of 10 in the series. This is their second trip to Eugene since 1967. In that 1967 contest, Ohio State was victorious 30-0. Woody Hayes would have been at the helm then for the Buckeyes, one of the legendary coaches in college football. Got out of the game when he grabbed, I think it was a Clemson player. He grabbed him by the face mask on the sideline, and that was sort of it for Woody. But a true legend in Buckeye history there, Woody Hayes. Oregon 10-4 straight up and against the spread when hosting top 10 conference foes. 10-4 Oregon against the spread when hosting top 10 conference foes. Ohio State is in the top 10. They are now a conference foe. Oregon 10-4 in the spot. This is you look at the defenses here again. Ohio State's defense allowing a paltry 203.4 yards, but Oregon's right there with them at 275.3 yards. And again, looking at the offenses, Ohio State's blistering right now at 510.4 yards per game. Oregon right there with them at 452.3. And so the schedule here, again, Dan, gives Oregon a big advantage, in my opinion, when looking at the ratings, when rating the rating. So for me, it's an Oregon or nothing here. I just think this atmosphere is going to be absolutely electric. This is a very tough place to go and play. It's the field's right on top of you. They make a ton of noise. You got the electric uniforms of Oregon. It's just, Ohio State's definitely a juggernaut. Nobody's going to argue that. And again, they've paid for it, as Oregon has as well. I just think this is a really tough place for Ohio State to go into and play. Will be the testing. Their rating right now I have up around in the 30s. This will be the tester if they are a true 30 team. Again, as I mentioned before, a team rated in the 30s for me is a team that in previous years would always make the Final Four and would likely win the national championship. So we're seeing a few teams that actually fit that mold that we've talked about. And this is one of the highest of them all. Texas was another one. They're obviously ranked number 1. Ohio State is another one. Mississippi, another one, holding a high rating even after their loss. For me, it's Oregon or nothing here, Dan.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people like Oregon, and a lot of people, both sides on this story. A lot of people think Dylan Gabriel, if he's going to show who he truly is and take it to the next level, he's got to do something in this game. So with a total of 54.5, Ray, with everyone expects, number 2 and number 3 to be electric, right? Like to come out and throw touchdowns. What's your thoughts on the first half under, right? A lot of teams, people expect high-powered offenses, but that might not play out. What's your thoughts on that first half under?
Again, think always back to rating the rating. Well, we do see 2 electric offenses here. Ohio State really hasn't played anybody that runs as stout of a defense as Oregon has, but both defenses sub 300-yard a game defenses. And this is something that I look at every year as you get toward the playoff format. When it was 4 games, even at 12 games, if you're allowing 400 yards per game on defense, I'm sorry, but you're not gonna win anything in terms of a natty or even a Final Four. It's just defenses win games, really good defenses. I know the game is skewed offensively. I know the passing rules favor the offense. I know all those things and I know everybody wants to see, as you just said, they want to see a shootout, right? They want this game to be 45-41. Well, as the Rolling Stones once said, you can't always get what you want. Two good, very good defenses here. So anybody that gave me any angle on an under, I would not argue with here, Dan.
Yeah, I just think, with such a high caliber game, with a total of 54.5. I mean, I don't know the first half total. I can look that up quick. But I just think with that sort of angle, you might, lean towards that first half under. So that's just my thoughts on that. Going to the next game, we have Ole Miss, number 9 ranked Ole Miss, going on the road to face number 13th ranked LSU. Ole Miss is a 3.5 point favorite here. Total 62.5, a lot of points. What do you like in this game, Ray?
So this one's another interesting one. LSU here, the Bayou Bengal is off the bye. Extra time to prepare for an electric Mississippi offense. For you total bettors, again, Dan mentioned the total. I saw it at 62.5 this morning pre-show. The over is 6-1 in the last 7, and they are averaging 79.9 points per game in this series. So big time over biased here. Last year, folks, 104 points were scored, 1,334 yards were compiled. So it's the history here tells us that 62.5 total is certainly the odds maker, not asleep at the switch ever, and is not here with the 62.5 total. But, if you go anyway in this one, I mean, it's hard not to lean with that trend of high points being scored. The home team here, Dan, 10-2 straight up, and has covered 9 of the last 10. For those of you that have never attended a game in Death Valley at night, I'm here to tell you it is one of the nation's biggest home field advantages. There is 0.0 chance that I would bet $1. And Mississippi might roll them, but I'm not going to put my money on a team traveling to LSU at night. Place is going to be absolutely electric. LSU has won 6 straight SEC home tilts, and they are 4-1-1 against the spread in those games. So again, I'm not revealing any great secrets here, folks. LSU at night in Death Valley is very, very hard, and that stat obviously reflects it. Mississippi brings the better defense into the game. LSU here is a little leaky at 368.3, and Mississippi's defense is averaging under 300. I just think, again, that Mississippi opened with that very soft stretch. They stumbled. LSU, this was one of my surprise teams in the SEC this year. I felt like they had an outside shot to nudge out a team like Mississippi or Mizzou to get up and maybe get in to fight for a conference championship game. I know that's hard when everybody just kind of feels like it's going to be Georgia and Alabama. I did like this LSU team coming into the season. There's absolutely no way I would bet against them at home at night in Death Valley, and they are off a bye. So the leans here would obviously the over is the trend, and LSU at home at night I'd have to side with them catching points, especially catching over a field goal. I saw 3.5 this morning.
Yeah, I really like the LSU team here in this spot as well. Going to the next game we have, Ray, we have 2 left here. Iowa State, 11th ranked Iowa State, on the road to face West Virginia. Iowa State is a 3.5 point favorite, total 53.5. Buyback on West Virginia is plus 130. Do you think the Mountaineers can keep this game close, Ray?
I mentioned earlier when I covered the Iowa game that I felt like, I was high on Iowa, but now it's pretty clear that they are the second best team in the great state of Iowa. This Iowa State team is very, very impressive. Just to take a quick look, I know I have that number right here. This defense is allowing 265.8 yards a game on defense, letting opponents, holding opponents down very tight. I just feel like this Iowa State team is an outstanding football team. West Virginia, on the other hand, just hasn't shown much this year. I have no reason to me the number to me should even be higher. I think there's obviously this game being played in West Virginia has affected the number a bit, but my ratings have Iowa State much better than West Virginia here. Again, their defense, 265.8 yards per game. West Virginia's is getting gashed at 373.5. And Iowa State does have an offense that's putting up 446.5 yards of offense playing against this defense today, I would look for Ohio State. Again, this is one of those games, Dan, where you can correlate plays if you wanted to. You could take Iowa State, lay in the number. You can take Iowa State team total. You can take there's a lot of different ways to line this up where to me, it just looks like Iowa State's going to jump all over them. They has won and covered 4 of the last 5, and 4 of the last 6, Dan, have gone under the total. So again, Iowa State's got a very good defense here. It wouldn't surprise me to see them hold the sort of air raidy offense of West Virginia down. Those 4 of those last 6 under, and they have averaged 49 points per game. So under the total that's posted of 53.5 here. Last meeting, West Virginia was a 6.5 point dog. They lost 31-14. So do I really, Spencer? You're asking me, do I like Iowa State at -4 plus 100? I mean, we're covering the game right now, Spencer. What do you want me to do for you, buddy? I mean, I pretty much said in the last 2 minutes talking that Iowa State should crush this team. So I like them at 3. I like them at 3.5. I like them at 4. I like them at 5. I like them at 6. How about that, my man?
I just got 3 at BetMGM. So,
and I saw 3 open this morning, and I did grab it. I grabbed the 3 opener. So happy to get a good number there. I just like Iowa State in the spot. West Virginia is a tough place to play. I've seen a couple of games there. They always get a big crowd. They're going to have a big one there today. Unfortunately, the crowd doesn't get on the field and play. I just think Iowa State is much more talented team. I don't see this as a type of team to let down. I certainly on the road, I don't see a letdown from Iowa State here. I just look for them to continue to roll and continue to cement their spot there. Ratings advantage, huge ratings advantage for Iowa State. So I'm Iowa State here, Dan, and Spencer. Iowa State.
Yep. Go Iowa State. I also just bet Iowa State -3. So we're all in this boat together, ladies and gentlemen. Going on to the next game. Our last game we have here on the dock is number 18th ranked Kansas State on the road to face America's team in Colorado Buffaloes. Kansas State on DraftKings is a 3-point favorite. Other places you can find 3.5 if you like Colorado. But DraftKings is a 3-point favorite here. Total 55.5. Buyback on the Buffaloes is +130. If you like Deion Sanders and the Buffaloes, are you going money line today, Ray?
So this one's interesting to me. I mean, we saved enough time to talk about this one because we always have to. If Colorado's playing right, you're going to get a lot of inquiries in this one. This is a big enough game, Dan, that both of them are off the bye. Dan, as you know, I look at opening numbers. This game opened at bookmaker at Kansas State 6. So again, opened at Kansas State 6, and this is no surprise to me. If you snatched that 6, you knew what you were doing because Colorado is, as Dan put it, oddly enough, they are America's team right now. They are the most talked about. You can't look through a news feed, any sports feed. Every other article's on Deion, the Heisman, right? The primetime, the watches, the rollies, the Teslas. I mean, the money is there. We all know that. Both teams off a bye here, Dan. Big time money has poured in on Colorado. I think I saw that almost every book that's, so I just want to caution people. This is kind of a good one to caution people on. The big thing on X or Twitter or whatever, or any social media, is they'll bring on an odds maker from a casino, and he'll say, we have to have, this is a game we have to have. There may be a casino down the street that has the exact opposite money they've taken in.
Exactly.
Books across the country are going to vary. Ask a book in Colorado what they need today. Ask a book in Kansas what they need today. I promise you they're 2 different things.
Yeah.
So you got to be careful when you look at that. People like to say that, well, when the money and the tickets are all on one team and the line's not moving or it's moving the other way, that's too much. Like, quit worrying about what everybody else is doing or individual books are doing. As a bookmaker, you're going to take the bets you take. You can't control what comes into your book. And by game time, you obviously know what you need. Doesn't mean the whole world's that way, okay? Obviously, this one's been bet down. Colorado, you knew that was going to happen. It's just they're just so the public is so enthralled with this team, the quarterback, the wide receiver, the two-way player. Kansas State 20-45-1 all time versus Colorado. So Colorado with a huge series edge here. Under head coach Kleiman, And this is obviously Kansas State's head coach, because we all know who Colorado's is, the great Deion Sanders. Kansas State does have a nice football coach in Kleiman. And I just wanted to give a number here for him that a lot of people probably don't know. He was at North Dakota State prior. He was at North Dakota State prior to coming to Kansas State. He was 69-6 at North Dakota State. So
that was a good North Dakota State team, right? Didn't they challenge for the FBS title, I think, or something?
I mean, if you look at that, that's just 10-1 every year, just 10 wins every year. Pile on it all. He's a very, very good head coach, and he's 14-9 against the spread in Big 12 road games. So this is not a place where head coach Kleiman is worried about taking his charges there into the mountains of Colorado. Kansas State, oddly, 0-4 run against the spread off a bye, which both teams, again, are off a bye here. So that's a little concerning. But, again, I think they're coached well enough that that's may just be sort of an anomaly figure. 67th meeting, as we mentioned earlier, 45-1 Kansas State all-time versus Colorado. This will be the 67th time they meet. Colorado has won 4 of the last 5 held here in Boulder. Colorado was 3-0 against the spread as a home dog last year. So Deion obviously not worried about what the odds makers say, probably not worried about what anybody says, really, except for his family, I think. One of the admirable attributes of Deion, quite frankly. I'd encourage everybody to, worry about the people you care about, not what's on Twitter, X, Facebook, whatever. So Colorado comfortable in this role. Colorado, again, bang for buck, NIL money spent. Still I'm waiting for this team to push over the 400-yard mark. They were down in the 340s, I think, earlier in the season. They've nudged their offense up to 382.3 yards per game. Kansas State's offense, actually, again, I'm sure they're spending a lot less money there in Kansas State, and they're averaging 428.3 yards offensively. And the defensive advantage here, again, he's been riding his defense and his offensive line all year. It seems to be producing results. The line is protecting Shedeur a little bit better, and the defense actually is what's been playing well for Colorado. We saw that, especially, you mentioned that UCF game, and they were at home. UCF was at home, and their offense got shut down by Colorado's defense. Their defense is actually allowing 362.3 yards per game, which is 20 yards less than the Kansas State defense. It's just an interesting game for me. I did not dive in here. Honestly, I almost thought to play Colorado here on the opener, just because I knew that this game was going to get smashed the other way. The line has sort of settled out where I think it should have been. I think that 6 number was a little bit steep. I think Kansas State at home, I would have made more of a touchdown favorite. That 6, I think, was just sort of an anomaly. I think it got snatched really quickly. So for me, no play, but a game I'll definitely be watching. As you mentioned, America's team is America's team because we all watch.
Yeah.
No play for me, Dan, but another one that I'll be taking in this afternoon.
Yeah, I just want to also point out the Heisman odds. I know you're not a big award person, but with my 18-1 ticket, I'm pretty excited about this. So Travis Hunter now down to plus 300 on DraftKings to win the Heisman. Last week that was plus 350. They were on a bye, so the movement there kind of concerns me. That it doesn't concern me. I like it because it's going down, but I think that number continuously gets shortened after every game. So if you like them, I wouldn't advise you to bet the plus 300 now, since you could have gotten a greater number a couple weeks ago. But just to keep an eye on that. Ray, quickly, what are some of your best bets this week?
Let's see what we're looking at here. I went with I like the Oregon for sure. I like Iowa State. I took the Missouri game, and I took the Clemson game of the games we talked about. I like Pitt as well. Texas I like. Washington I like. Most of the games we covered I gave out an opinion on today. Again, packages are available $99.99 for 8 weeks. Contact me via DM on X or at greyfoxhunt@yahoo.com. Excited for this one. As you mentioned, the big thing with that Heisman voting and that price, Dan, is that they're going to be on TV. Like there's guys that maybe were Heisman candidates earlier in the season that were at shorter prices. But again, when you take away from one, you got to give to another, right? So he's getting seen every week on TV, and he's continuing to
play well. I mean,
play really, really well on both sides of the ball. I think that the keystone for you winning that bet is Oregon has to finish with at least 8 or 9 wins. If they don't, if they don't get to that, it'd be really nice if they finish with 10, but they just traditionally don't hand out Heismans to 6 and 6, 7 and 5 teams. It's really hard to do that because you're going to have some other guys that are going to be on, maybe 12 and 0, 11 and 1 teams that are also going to get that airtime. And there's a number of those I can think of. He continues to do what he's doing. He's going to get the coverage. Hopefully Deion can keep this team playing well. And I love that value at 18-1. When you gave that, I was like, that's ridiculous. How is he?
I was
great bet by Dan there.
Thank you. Dylan Gabriel playing. He's in the Oregon quarterback, 15-1 to win this award. So that might get shortened after his game against Ohio State. My best bet this week is a game we didn't really talk about, but I think Arizona going against BYU. I think this is going to be a tough matchup for Arizona to be on the road. So I'm going to take the under 48.5 there, Ray. That's my best bet. I'm coming off a winner with Arizona State last week against Kansas. Kansas is not playing this week, unfortunately, so I'm not going to fade them. So that's my best bet, BYU, Arizona, under 48.5.
Mr. Miller won last week too, didn't he, Dan?
Yes, he did. He had the Pittsburgh game against you.
Yeah.
Yep. So we're doing well over here in the Miller household.
That's
so,
right.
Thank you all for watching. We really appreciate you, everyone in the comment section, everyone listening to YouTube, on Twitter. So continuously watching us. We really appreciate it. We love doing the show. We love your interaction. So make sure you hit us on YouTube, on Twitter, at Moneyline Miller, at Ray Greyfox, NukeTheHouse.com. We're up over 400 units. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button and turn on post notifications because that helps us out and helps you out too. So thank you all for listening, and we hope you have a wonderful college football betting day. Talk to you next week, Ray. See you.
Be safe.